Being a housewife is easy, my husband said. So we switched roles, and now I'm earning twice as much as him. In the end, he's exhausted, broken, and realized his mistake too late. For years, I, 35, had grown accustomed to hearing my husband, Vic, 42, make comments suggesting that my life was easy because I was a housewife. At first, I ignored them, but over time, his remarks became more offensive. Every time he came home from work and saw me folding laundry or cooking dinner, he would grumble about how nice it must be to stay home all day. If I ever mentioned being tired, he would scoff, saying that he had a real job. At first, I convinced myself that he wasn't serious. Maybe he simply didn't understand how much work it took to keep the house running and raise our kids. But after years of hearing the same dismissive comments, it became clear that he genuinely believed I had an easy life. The last straw came during a family dinner when my brother-in-law commented on how exhausting his long shifts were. Vic, in front of everyone, laughed and said at least he wasn't doing nothing like his wife. His mother, always traditional, agreed, saying that men carried all the financial burden while women lived comfortably. My sister-in-law looked visibly uncomfortable, and even my brother-in-law shifted in his chair, as if he wanted no part in the conversation. That night, as soon as we got home, I confronted him. I told him that being a housewife was not a luxury. I took care of every aspect of our children's lives, taking them to school, helping with homework, taking them to doctor's appointments, cooking, cleaning, doing laundry, and countless other responsibilities he didn't even notice. His response? If it was really so hard, we should switch roles. At first, I thought he was joking, but when I looked at him closely, I realized he was serious. Standing there with his arms crossed, leaning against the counter, he said that if I wanted to prove a point, I should go back to work while he stayed home. He said it like a challenge, as if daring me to fail. Well, I accepted. For the first time in 8 years, I updated my resume and started job hunting. I had given up my career to be a full-time mom and had no idea how the job market would view the gap in my work history. But I had always been good at what I did. And thanks to a few online courses I had taken over the years, I managed to land a job surprisingly fast. When I told Vic, he seemed shocked. I don't think he expected me to find something so quickly, but he forced a smile and said he was excited to take a little vacation at home. That was all I needed to realize he had no idea what was coming. On the first morning, I kissed the kids goodbye and left for work, leaving Vic in charge of everything. I had barely backed out of the driveway when I got the first panicked text. "Where are the kids' lunchboxes?" I replied that they were on the kitchen counter. 2 minutes later, another text. "Where is their homework?" I told him it was in their backpacks. 5 minutes later. "What do I pack for their lunch?" I replied that he should figure it out. It was hard to hold back my laughter. It was literally the first morning, and he was already lost. When I arrived at work, I turned off notifications because I had an important meeting and couldn't afford to answer texts every 5 minutes. That evening, when I got home, I found complete chaos. The house was a mess. The kids were sitting on the couch eating potato chips for dinner, and Vic looked completely drained. He gave me a tired look and said the day had been really tough. I smiled, patted his shoulder, and told him to get some rest because tomorrow would be another busy day. By the third day, I noticed a change in Vic's attitude. He was overwhelmed, exhausted, completely out of his comfort zone. The laundry was piling up. The dishes were stacked in the sink. Our kids had already missed a homework assignment because he forgot to check the school emails. When I casually mentioned how nice it must be to stay home all day, he didn't even respond. By the end of the week, he gave up. He collapsed onto the couch after putting the kids to bed, rubbing his face as if he had just run a marathon. He admitted that he never expected it to be this hard. I just smiled and said that maybe now he understood why I was always so tired too. But the real shock came when I received my first paycheck. He asked why my salary was so high, and I explained that I had negotiated a good position and also earned commissions. I realized that the job market valued me more than he ever had. I was making more than him, and that's when the real problems began. At first, he pretended it didn't bother him, saying it was great for our finances. But I knew my husband. Over the next few days, he was acting off, quieter, brooding over something. And then, his frustration started to show. One night, I came home to find the kids eating frozen microwave meals. The house looked like a tornado had hit. Dirty dishes piled up, toys scattered everywhere, clothes dumped on the couch. I asked if he had a rough day. He looked at me, frustrated, and said that being a stay-at-home dad was nothing like he had imagined. He complained that the kids didn't listen to him, that he never had time to cook because they constantly needed his attention. I pointed out that I had done it for 8 years without complaining. He muttered that it was different for me. I asked him exactly how it was different. Silence. As the weeks passed, the resentment only grew. The house was never really clean. He started ordering takeout multiple times a week. One night, I asked if he had done the grocery shopping. He grumbled that he didn't have time. I picked up his phone and saw that he had spent hours playing video games. When I pointed it out, he got defensive, saying he needed a break after taking care of the kids. I reminded him that when I was a stay-at-home mom, he expected me to do everything: cook, clean, take care of the kids, without ever needing a break. He snapped back that back then he had a real job, implying that my life had been easier. I couldn't believe it. I reminded him that this was the life he chose. He dismissed everything I did, insisted we swap roles. Now suddenly he realized it wasn't so easy. But if he struggled with the housework, nothing hit him harder than my paycheck. My first one bothered him. My second one broke him. Now I was making twice what he used to earn. One night, as I was going over our finances, he asked how much I was putting into the joint account. I told him I would contribute the same as always, $1,000 a month for basic expenses. The rest would go into my personal account. He said that wasn't fair. I reminded him that when I was a stay-at-home mom, he never put his entire salary into the joint account either. A week later, he was begging to go back to the way things were. But I had already tasted independence, and I wasn't willing to give it up. I love what I do. I love not being treated like my work doesn't matter. And I refuse to go back to a life where I'm expected to sacrifice everything while he chooses the easy way out. So, do you think I'm the villain for not wanting to quit my job now that I earn more than him? Update. I'm back to share how Vic reacted to my refusal. Thank you all for supporting my decision to keep working. Here's what happened. Within days, his bitterness turned into open resentment. He started making passive-aggressive comments just like he used to when I was a stay-at-home mom. Things like, "Some people don't care about their families anymore," or "Some wives are more interested in their careers than their homes." If I brought home takeout because I was too exhausted to cook, he would dramatically shake his head and talk about how he still made an effort despite his hard day. Hard? He was home all day and didn't even cook. From what I could see, his idea of a hard day was scrolling through his phone, barely supervising the kids, and, if he was in a good mood, throwing some chicken nuggets in the oven. Instead of engaging, I let his comments slide. I knew what he was trying to do, and I refused to take the bait and start an argument. Unfortunately, that only seemed to frustrate him more. Since he couldn't get the reaction he wanted from his passive-aggressive remarks, he decided to escalate. He started completely neglecting household chores, as if he wanted to prove a point. At first, I thought he was just being lazy, but then I realized he was waiting for me to break. Dishes piled up in the sink. The kids often wore mismatched clothes because he wasn't keeping up with laundry. He even stopped picking up after himself, leaving dirty socks and clothes scattered around the house like breadcrumbs leading to his next tantrum. One night, I came home to find absolute chaos. I looked around at the mess, then at him, sitting on the couch, scrolling through his phone like nothing was wrong. I asked if he had done anything that day. He shrugged and said he was too tired. I reminded him that when I was a stay-at-home mom, I never had the luxury of simply not doing things. The house still had to be clean, the kids still had to be fed. So I got straight to the point. If he wasn't going to do his part, I wasn't going to pick up his slack either. He laughed, like he didn't believe me, but I was dead serious. I walked past the mess, kissed the kids goodnight, and went straight to bed. For days, the house remained a disaster. At first, Vic seemed satisfied. But then he realized something. I wasn't going to give in. I refused to clean up after him. I refused to cook for him. I took care of the kids, yes, but anything outside of my responsibilities as their mother, I left it exactly as it was. And that's when his plan started to fall apart. The kids started complaining that Daddy didn't make good meals anymore. The pile of dirty laundry grew so much that he ran out of clean clothes. Then came the final humiliation. One day, his own mother showed up unannounced and was horrified by the state of the house. I wasn't home when it happened, but when I arrived, Vic looked mortified. His mother scolded him for being a lazy husband. From what I heard, she spent an hour cleaning the house and lecturing him about how he should be grateful that I was working hard to provide for the family. And that's when the last piece of his ego shattered. Not even his traditionalist mother was on his side. That night, after the kids went to bed, Vic came to talk to me. He started by saying, "This isn't working." I asked him exactly what wasn't working. He asked if we could switch back. He said he missed working, that he felt like he was losing himself staying home, that he needed to go back to being the provider. I asked him if he really wanted to go back to work, or if he just couldn't handle the fact that I was the one in control now. He got defensive immediately, saying it wasn't about control, it was about balance, that things felt off now. I pointed out that the only thing that had changed was that he was now in the role I had been in for 8 years, and suddenly it was a problem. Just like before, I told him we weren't switching back. Vic didn't take my answer well. But then, his approach changed. One night, as we were getting ready for bed, he casually mentioned that I should consider taking a lower-paying job, something with more flexible hours, so I could still help out around the house. I stared at him because I couldn't believe what I was hearing. I asked if he was seriously suggesting that I downgrade my career just because he couldn't handle his side of the arrangement. He had the audacity to say he was only thinking about what was best for the family. I laughed right in his face and told him that if he really wanted what was best for the family, he should step up and do his part, instead of trying to drag me down. He went silent after that, but I saw it in his face. This isn't over. That much I can guarantee. Update. I knew Vic wasn't done fighting. I saw it in his eyes that night. Men like him don't know how to handle losing control. At first, I thought his next move would be another round of tantrums. What I didn't anticipate was just how far his desperation would take him. I had just received my paycheck and was about to transfer part of it to our joint account, something I always did. But when I logged in, my heart sank. The balance was significantly lower than it should have been. At first, I thought I had made a mistake. Maybe I had miscalculated some bills. Maybe there was a delayed withdrawal. But then I checked the transactions, and there it was. Vic had withdrawn nearly $8,000 in the past week. I immediately confronted him, demanding to know what he had done with that money. My head was spinning as I pressed him to explain where our savings had gone. Vic shrugged and said it was an investment. He had bought a franchise, something that was supposed to make us a lot of money. I asked him what franchise, what kind of business it was, and what the hell he was even talking about. That's when he said it. It was a sales-based model, something that worked with passive income. All he had to do was recruit people, and the money would start rolling in. It didn't sound like a scam, it was a scam. This man had blown our savings on a multi-level marketing scheme. I was so stunned that for a moment, I couldn't even speak. I just stared at him, with that expression that screams, "You've seriously messed up," waiting for him to realize how ridiculous he sounded. But he kept rambling about growth potential and financial independence. Anything to avoid admitting that he had been scammed, and that we were now out $8,000. I asked him if he was serious. Vic gave me that "there's no point arguing with you" look, and said that I didn't understand business. He reminded me that I had never run one before, and that I should trust him because this is how successful people make real money. I reminded him that I now made more money than him. I had a real career, not a pyramid scheme. His face twisted with frustration, and he snapped that it wasn't a pyramid scheme. It was a networking opportunity. I almost felt sorry for him. Almost. I told him, point blank, that he had thrown our money away on a scam. And that's when the excuses started. First, he tried to blame me. He said, "If you had just let me go back to work like I wanted, I wouldn't have needed to make this decision." I reminded him, again, that he was the one who insisted we switch roles. He was the one who thought my job was easy. Then he switched tactics. He said that I should support him in his new business, that I should invest my own money to help him grow it. I looked at him like he had lost his mind. I said, "Let me get this straight. You stole money from our joint account, wasted it on a scam, and now you want me to put even more money into it? "Are you an idiot, or is it just today?" He said that's what he wanted, and that I didn't need to insult him, that people only insult when they're losing an argument. I asked what had happened to his own savings. Did he have any, or had he blown it all on golf and nonsense? Did he really expect me to take on the role of the submissive wife, throwing my money into his ridiculous delusion while he sat at home pretending to be an entrepreneur? I told him that not a single cent of my money was going into his scam. He exploded. He started yelling that I was selfish, that I didn't believe in him, that I was destroying his chance at success. I let him rant, let him scream. And then, when he finally stopped to breathe, I looked him straight in the eye and told him he had two choices. He could either face the fact that he was the one who screwed up and start acting like an actual adult, or he could keep pushing me. And if he kept pushing me, he wouldn't like where this was going. He went silent. But I saw it in his face. This isn't over. I can guarantee that. Update. Vic never believed I would actually go through with it. When I walked out that night, he didn't try to stop me. He probably thought I'd cool down and come back in the morning because, in his mind, I wasn't serious, and the scam was still a great opportunity. Maybe he assumed I'd act like a good wife and we'd just move past it. But I didn't come back the next day, or the day after that. That's when he realized I was serious and started calling and texting me. Since I didn't respond, because my decision was already made, his messages became more aggressive. I ignored them all. I had already hired a lawyer, and when I finally replied, I was direct. I was filing for divorce. Vic lost it. He called me selfish, ungrateful, materialistic, that I had forgotten my place now that I was making money. For years, he made me feel insignificant for being a stay-at-home wife. And now, the moment I achieved something of my own, I was the villain for refusing to let him take advantage of me. I didn't fall for his games. I just sent the divorce papers. At first, he tried to resist. Maybe he thought he could manipulate me into changing my mind. But I was done. I gave him one last chance that night, and he wasted it. When he realized I was really leaving, he tried to backtrack. He called me using the softest voice I'd heard in months. He said he had made mistakes, that he didn't want to lose his family. I let him talk. And then I told him the truth. I wasn't divorcing him just because of the money. I was divorcing him because I finally saw him for who he really was. Update. 6 months have passed. My career is still growing. I have financial freedom, stability, and most importantly, peace. Vic, on the other hand, is drowning. The great opportunity was, of course, a scam. The money is gone, and without a wife to support him, he's struggling to stay afloat. He tried to reach out to me once, just to say how hard things were for him. I didn't respond. Vic only valued me when he needed something from me. I will never make that mistake again. Not once has he asked about them. Apparently, the few months he had to take care of the kids were too much for him, and now he's just done with them. Yet another reason proving he's a terrible person. Update. I'm not sure how many of you will be interested in this update since it's mostly about my ex-husband's failed investment and its consequences, and there were a lot of them. But since some of you asked about how it all ended, and I was a bit vague before, here's what I know. The investment was a scam. Plain and simple. It was nothing more than a scheme where the money from new recruits was used to pay those above them, the ones who created the scam. And it also paid those who brought in new recruits. In my ex-husband's case, he convinced 2 friends to invest as well. One of them put in $12,000, the other $6,000. And you can bet that if my ex had more money, he would have thrown in even more. Luckily for me, this is all in the past. With the divorce, I recovered the money he took from our assets. But his friends, they weren't so lucky. When the whole thing collapsed, meaning when the authorities arrested some people from the company, his friends were furious. They sued him. And now he has to pay them back. Whether he already has or not, I don't know. But on top of losing his investment and having to return my money in the divorce, he also owes at least $18,000 for the money his friends lost. And to think, I warned him so many times that it was a scam. But he was convinced he was about to become the next Rockefeller. The only thing my ex-husband has in common with Rockefeller is that both dug holes. Except instead of striking oil, he found a sea of debt. At the very least, I hope he's learned something and gained some intelligence, because a person who falls for pyramid schemes is a danger to society. Have you ever been through something similar? Tell me in the comments. Don't forget to like and subscribe for more content like this.